Hey everyone, back from Autodesk University. It went really well. It was great seeing everyone, and I think overall it was a success. It was great interacting with the community, presenting again live for people, not over Zoom, and that was really fun. Sure, it had its occasions where things didn't go perfect. I'm not going to go into that, but it was a really fun conference. I taught 2 sessions, one of which was a lunch and learn with Intel. That content's going to be shared other ways, so I'll update here as soon as that is. And I had another session called I Shipped My Scripts regarding shipping Dynamo graphs and some of the considerations when updating. The good news is for AU, I did vlogs. I'll link those below for each day of the event, which was really fun. Pushed me to create things in a different way that I'm not used to. In addition to the vlogs, I did manage to get a recording of my class for about 30 minutes. We're recording on a GoPro Hero 9, so it's not the best quality indoors, but it is something that we were able to capture. I do wish that I would have recorded my laptop screen. I didn't think to do that. When preparing for a presentation, it's easy to forget things, and if all I forgot was to hit record on my laptop, we're in pretty good shape. But we did get some recording on the GoPro. It did die at a certain point, so it was about 30 minutes in, it died. But we do have that with some decent audio. Another thing that I use pretty often are these DJI mics. So if you saw me at the conference, you saw I had the little fuzzy lapel on me, and that's because this gives you good audio. I'll do a review on that soon. I got these for my birthday, and they're really awesome, and they're super useful. So I'll do a review so that way you can all see how they work too. But I'm going to go ahead and post on this video the whole recording that we have of the I Shipped My Scripts course. Like I said, it's about 30 minutes. The video quality is decent. You can see the projector screen and you can see me talking. So it is what it is. I wanted to make sure to share it because I think it's worth sharing for people to see. The class was recorded prior to AU and is going to be available on AU Online. It's not quite there yet, but I will share as soon as it is. So I'll update the description when that's available as well. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and transfer this over to the course. So here it is. I shipped my scripts live from Autodesk University 2022. I hope you like it. Let me know below what you think. And if we get enough interaction, maybe I'll do a live stream of that content as well. So yeah, check it out now. And thank you for checking out this video. That all kind of cool? I didn't plan on doing any of that. That's fun. Cool. So this is an hour and a half long. We'll see if it goes that whole time depending on questions and all that kind of stuff. If you have questions, shout them out, raise your hand, interrupt me, all that stuff. Don't worry. I'm not going to make you wait till the end. I'm not going to do any of that. If you have a question on something that has no relation to this class, fine. That's fine. We can go into it as long as it has somewhat of a relation to computation and Dynamo and Revit. If you ask an AutoCAD question, we're going to kindly ask you to leave, so that's okay too. Yeah, so my name's John Pearson. If you haven't met me, I'm a design technology specialist at a company called Parallax Team. We're based out of Dallas, Texas. I'm located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Who else heard of Albuquerque? And how have you heard of it? Bugs Bunny, right? Yeah, okay, cool. And my Twitter handle's at John T. Pearson. It used to be at 60-second Revit, and I changed that recently because I've changed a few other things as well. I decided it's time to use my real name, stop hiding behind the 60-second Revit moniker. So that's kind of that. Everyone has a Dynamo journey. You're here right now. This is part of your Dynamo journey, right? Do we all agree? We're going to try to stay awake too. So everyone participate, please. I started using Dynamo go back. I opened Dynamo in 2013. The nodes were yellow at the time. It was Dynamo 0.6.7. They were yellow already, which is already freaking scary as heck. And then they turned red because I found a graph that does space layout stuff with planning cubes. And I was like, oh, I'll just run this. And everyone at my firm will be like, cool, we could do blocking diagrams now. I told my BIM manager, oh, I found this graph. It was freely available and it'll just do it. I opened it and it errored out, and I was like, what the hell is, what's going on? I was like, this is ridiculous. And it scared me in 2013. I closed it and I was like, I'll never learn how to use Dynamo. I'll go back to working on the template and the families. And then a year later, we got approval to go to AU, 2014. And every class that said Dynamo, I registered for, including the Monday sessions that they had previously. This year they didn't have them, hopefully next year. And I registered for all of them. One class that and there wasn't a lot back then in 2014, mind you, there was like 6 classes. One of them was by a guy named Marcello Scambaluri. Has anyone heard of Marcello? He taught a class called Dynamo for Dummies. And I was like, I'm a dummy when it comes to a lot of things, specifically Dynamo in this case. Maybe that'll help me. And he showed mapping a wall base height parameter to a floor or something, and tying it together and leaving it on run automatic while you move things around, and they were talking. And I was like, whoa, Dynamo can do that. It can connect these things and make them talk. And it like changed my Revit life. I was like, this makes sense now. I don't have to have all of these nodes everywhere that are placing blocks and making facades and the roof examples in the primer and all that kind of stuff. So it was really exciting. I did go back to my office and start making graphs that are that do things like change arrowhead types of text and tag types. So anyone have to do any updates like that ever in a template where you change all the arrowhead types? It sucks. Like you have to edit every type of every text family, every tag family to do that. So one of my first Dynamo graphs was updating arrowhead types in our template. So that was pretty cool to be able to do that. In 2015, this is going faster than I'm talking. But in 2015, I started publishing that as a custom package called Rhythm. Anyone used Rhythm before? Cool, awesome. I started publishing all that in a package called Rhythm because I really just wanted to share what I was learning, and I thought it would help people out quite a bit. From there, I did end up starting to build other nodes, Python nodes, things like that. Do we have any Python users in the room? A few. Do we have people who want to learn Python? Dissect all the packages you can, for sure. That's how I learned. Clockwork, Archilab, Spring nodes, Rhythm. Dissect them and just try to see what they're doing in Python. If you want a little more, I have an AU class in 2019 with a data set for Python learning. That's up on the AU website. But I also have a course as well through my website, Design Tech Unraveled, for Python training as well. It is a paid course, but I also publish content on YouTube as well. So just want to kind of let you know about that out there if you're just kind of stuck in that Python rut that a lot of us have been in as well. So last time we had AU in person, Dynamo nodes looked like this, right? Yeah, everyone's familiar with that one. Not the yellow one, that's years ago now. And now they look like this. I'm just gonna say it. I took it out of the slides, but I was going to say, just don't tell anyone. Over the last 3 years, I didn't only gain some weight, Dynamo did. The nodes are huge now. It's interesting. They look pretty cool though, and we'll look at those today. Don't tell anyone I took it out of the slides. Shh. So let's go over the state of Dynamo right now. So I'm assuming everyone in the room's opened Dynamo at least once. Raise your hands. We're gonna get you to move around. Is anyone new to Dynamo? Because that's fine too. That is perfectly fine because we're going to cover those essentials as well in here. So I'll joke around a lot, but we are going to cover a lot of the essentials and then a lot of the things to prepare for in the upgrades with Dynamo. So Dynamo versioning, can anyone tell me how it works? What's the logic? I heard grumbles. It doesn't work. Oh, wow, dang. We have some Dynamo team members in here, so shout that stuff out. It's good. Dynamo versioning actually has a very logical reasoning to it. This is in the handout for you as well, for you to print out, put on your monitor, on your fridge, you know, all that good stuff. That teal colored or greenish on the screen is the major version. This is called semantic versioning. That should be compatible with all versions that start with that number. So 2.blink. Right now in Revit, we have Dynamo from Revit 2020, which is 2.0.4. I have these memorized now, and I don't know what else I erased to store that, but it's there. So in Revit 2020, we have 2.0.4. 2021, we have 2.6.1. 22, 2.12.1. And 23, we have 2.13.1. That first number starts the same. So we should technically have compatibility for 4 versions, which is pretty sweet. And all these other ones, we break them down a bit more. So there might be adding new features that don't break Dynamo, but they might disappear. We're going to look at a feature today called graph properties. And that still works backwards, but you lose the properties. So they didn't break the versions, but they did kind of like screw you over in the process. So it's kind of like interesting. We'll look at it. So that's the agenda for today. What's broken? We'll not dwell on the negative as much as I can help it, I guess. Has anyone had any other Dynamo classes this week? Exciting classes? Learned a few things? We're going to undo all that. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're going to help you understand how to migrate those things between versions in this class because it is exciting. Dynamo is an exciting product, and it connects to so many things, but you have to consider a few things as you're rolling it out. So drop-down nodes. I have to like dwell on this a little too. So who all's used a drop-down in Dynamo? Use them all the time. Yeah, they're great. They work really well. Categories, drop-downs, we'll look at those when we get in Dynamo here in a moment. They're really great to be able to collect things. So I won't stay in PowerPoint the whole time, but this was a lead.
They work with indexing, right?
That we're gonna go, shh, don't spoil it for everyone. So they work pretty well. The alternative is you type it out by hand if you don't use a drop-down node. But kind of like what you're going into, they don't work all the time. And if you don't know this, you're going to find yourself starting to lose some traction when it comes to your Dynamo excitement, like at your firm. And you need to know, that's why you're here. If there's something you take from this class, it's some of these things that you just should consider as you're rolling things out. Yeah, this was made in 2019 to work with walls. I upgraded it to 2020 and it picked windows. Awesome. That breaks a whole Dynamo graph if I'm trying to do something really crazy with doors or whatever, or walls. If I jump up, oh, and I said 2.0.4 earlier, it's 2.3. 2.6 in Revit 21. I'm now working with structural truss tags, even if I didn't want to, right? Like, hey, you wanted to work with walls, not anymore. You're now working with structural truss tags. 22, I'm now working with wind loads. I didn't know I was a structural designer. This is sweet. Cool. Your graph's broken 4 different ways already, right? In Revit 23, I'm still working in structural. I started out as an architect. Now I'm in structural completely. Cool. And, I mean, that's awesome, right? These got friendly. That one's not ready yet. When I was recording that one, they were like, wait a minute, because the Revit 24 showed up first and then the image not found, and they were like, hold up, okay. And then they put me on the last day. So the general rule of thumb for drop-downs still is to only use them when you want them to change for something like Dynamo Player, generative design, or if the user interacts with the graph all the time. Don't trust drop-downs if you're not going to have the user look at it. That's my advice, and one thing that I hope you get from this. You hard code the values unless it's changeable. And you hard code them like that, category by name, and you're good. And we've been telling people to do this for years. Since last time we were in person, I've been telling people this. So we're good, we're happy, we're good, it's awesome. Unless you're on that first release of Revit 23. Man, this one got me. What in the heck is this? That really doesn't make any sense, right? So Dynamo is a complicated product, and they did a bug fix to fix some language things, some region things. And this broke to pieces when Revit 23 came out on us. It was actually grabbing, I guess, the first one. I don't really know all the reasoning. I just know I was ticked off. That's all I know. Because this has been stable for like 4 versions now. So, new suggested method. is to use the element ID. Who all knows what an element ID is in Revit? Raise your hand. Let's get moving a little. For those who don't know, an element ID is assigned to every element in Revit, and it's kind of like its driver's license number. Like it can change under certain conditions, you know. Creating central files, it might change, things like that. For categories, those are what are called reserved IDs with a negative symbol in front. So I can't get that on another element if it has a negative in front. Fun fact, ceiling grids in Revit, there's a subcategory for that that has a hard-coded ID that you can actually override with the API. So I don't know if you knew that. That's a fun little tidbit. But ceilings in the dropdown, you have ceilings, surface patterns, cut patterns, and all that. Not a supported feature, but you can. I'm here to tell you what you can do, whether people like it or not, I think. I suggest using the element ID method. That's in Monocle. It does it for you, so you don't have to memorize all these element IDs. But on the forums, we've been told that now that they're static and work in all Dynamo versions, just use dropdowns. Don't worry about hard coding it. Just trust Dynamo, right? Yeah? Do you guys like that? Yeah. When I saw this post, I was like, all right now. He's a great guy. I censored his name. You probably know who it is, but I was like, bro, come on. And then supported means 23, 22, and 21. If you're in Revit 2020 or 2019, you're not in a supported Revit version. So yeah, that's awesome. So then I was like, okay, I'll use dropdowns. Let's challenge what you just told me to do, Mr. Autodesk dude. And I was like, I created this graph in 2.13, and I'm going to go ahead and open it in a supported Dynamo version in 2.6 in Revit 21. Let's see what's going on here. So we're going to open that one and take a look. Who knows what happened? Come on, shout it out if anyone knows. It's all gone. Yep, you're right. You win a chocolate. This is a supported version of Dynamo. Semantic versioning says this should work. It does. What's happening is there's a bug suppressed behind the scenes that we're not seeing. And I had to find this out by looking through the GitHub release notes of Dynamo, which is a little frustrating, but showing this here so all of you can take it back is kind of the point. Input dropdowns were fixed in Revit 22 and Dynamo 2.12. So that index thing, dropdowns used to remember only the index they were selected, so 0 through whatever. And then it would pick 12 was walls, it'd pick whatever index 12 was and step through. They fixed that in 2.12, and now it remembers the exact selection regardless of what index it is. So they fixed that, but they broke it in every older version of Dynamo. And you can't update Dynamo now, right? Does anyone else know that? Starting in Revit 2020, you can't install Dynamo in Revit. It just comes with point releases. So when they fixed it in 2.12, they broke it in every older version of Dynamo on us without us all knowing, which is a little frustrating. But they did offer a fix, which is awesome. So there is, I'm going backwards. Jeez. There is a fix called Dynamo Future File. So if you're in a version older than 22, install this as part of your deployments in 21, 20, and 19. So this is a must-have package. Michael is on the Dynamo team, Mike Kirshner. And this is how they're patching that because you can't update Dynamo. So you now have to install a package to update the broken thing in Dynamo. But thankfully he did it because they could have just been like, you're not in a supported version anymore. So I don't know what they could have done. But yeah, so install that and you're good to go from that point of view. You need to deploy that package and you'll be good. So we had a few Python users in here as well, right? Hands again, because I forgot already. All right, cool. In Revit 22, we were introduced to a new version of Python, so everything's pretty good. It's kind of okay, but now we're being kind of pushed to a new engine in Python for Dynamo 2.13. It's called CPython 3, and they introduced it in Revit 22 for you to be able to migrate to that. The reason is they changed it because it hasn't had some security updates for IronPython 2.7 in a while. So it's kind of like a use at your own risk kind of thing. That version is IronPython 2.7. When you open a graph with Python in it, let me go back one more. It does show you a warning. So if you open a graph with Python being used, it's a little bit of a scary warning. And you start to see that you're missing a few things as well. So IronPython 2.7, you can see that it's running with warnings, all those kind of things. So Revit 23 breaks all your Python scripts, by the way. Yeah, Mr. Sunshine at this last class, I guess. Right? Do you appreciate the honesty? Just kind of let me know, okay? Because if not, we'll go right now. I'm just kidding. So yeah, it breaks everything. IronPython 2.7 is that version that all of these packages depend on, and they still do. Revit 23 has been out for a while. Package authors have hundreds of nodes. Package authors have been told to update hundreds of nodes. A little frustrating when you have all these packages going on. But you are able to install Dynamo IronPython 2.7, and it's good.
I think Lunchbox said, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore.
So the comment was, you're being worse than me. Lunchbox said, screw it, I'm done with this. Better representation of that, because Lunchbox is no longer updated on the package manager. As Lunchbox said, we're going to open source it and leave it up to the people who want to use it to update it. That's a better phrasing.
So he said, screw it, do it yourself.
Lunchbox is now Lunchbox is now fully open source on Bitbucket, and if you still use Lunchbox, it is kind of do it yourself. I have a branch of it that's updated to Revit 23. So
I believe it's not Python, they're sharing the solution for...
So theirs is not Python based, it is C# based, so they shared their whole solution for that, which is pretty epic because for years Lunchbox wasn't open. And I was like, how are you doing some of this? You know, so like that becoming open source was like, in a way, I'd rather have access to that open source code than the package on the package manager anymore, because that's so valuable. That is gold, having all of that logic that Nate and his team built for years. Lunchbox was one of the first packages that came out for Dynamo, I think, and having access to that's pretty epic. It is sad that it's not on the package manager and I can't just install it and update it all the time. But I think that lives on in that way, which is cool. I wouldn't suggest deploying Lunchbox unless you plan on managing the solution yourself as well. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but it is one of those things that they could have just disappeared and it would be gone, or we can have access to the code. That's a good comment though. That's it for all the broken stuff. I'm done complaining. Oh no, okay. All right, so what's new? We're actually gonna do a live demo for this part. That way we just get right in the software and talk about all the new features. We'll also use Dynamo 2.13 in here with the dark nodes. All right, cool, so we're gonna go over what's new. A good portion has not. Those who have used it, you can help me out as I run through things, so that's cool. All right, so we're gonna look at some new features. I think this should just come in Dynamo on the splash screen, but they told me no. All right, graph properties, annotation enhancements, Dynamo player enhancements, and we're going to make a graph that color codes keynotes. Who all uses user keynotes in their projects? Oh man. Who all uses material and element keynotes in their projects on their details? No one uses keynotes hardly? Or okay. Who's working on projects? Who's auditing those projects people are working on, right? All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. So this is a model I've been working really hard on for this class. It's a passion project, really. So if we go to Manage Dynamo and fire this guy up, we will have Dynamo open. This goes till 6, okay. And we'll run through this a little bit. Hopefully I have all the right stuff installed because that'll be fun. So what we're going to do is I have keynotes here on my screen, if you can kind of see them. Dynamo's going to like fight with me now, so that's fun. But I have keynotes here. And right offhand, I don't know what's user keynoted. When I was at an architecture firm, we had people user keynoting all the time, and we wanted it to be tied to the keynote database. That was a big deal for us. And we've had clever users create fake detail components that they just user keynoted all day, and it was awful when we'd update the keynote database. So we like to flag those kind of things. So in Dynamo, you do start to get access to some of this data that's not available in Revit filters. So in terms of a keynote item in Revit, key source is a valid parameter that you can't access in view filters. Does anyone use view filters in here? We're gonna move a little. Yes. If you don't use view filters, you should. They're really great, but you can't access all the parameters, which kind of stinks. But in Dynamo, we have access to a lot of that content. So what we're going to do is click New. I'll make this full screen for now. And this is kind of what our library looks like now. So in Dynamo 2.13, they took out all those awesome icons that we all worked so hard to have. I'm a little emotional about it.
Does the search function make sense now?
Does the search function make sense now? You have good questions. All right, let's see. Let's test it live. Family types. All right, everyone, a round of applause for Dynamo search function. That worked. That's right. In older versions, if you type family types, you don't get that. You get who knows what. It's awful. They've improved it a little bit in 2.13. They really have. My favorite one is all elements of type. So let's see, all elements of type. Ooh, they fixed it even more. All elements of type is all elements of class now in 2.13 and Revit 23. That's confusing, but class is a little closer to what it is in the API. Type didn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's fixed even. So yes, the search function's better. If you don't want to use their search function though, install Monocle and you can actually just use something called Simple Search that doesn't show all these icons and it's a little faster as well. So you can use that too. There's a decent amount of time dedicated to showing these icons when you search. How many people find those icons really valuable when they're searching? Yeah, a couple? Okay. We got those icons. We'll leave them for now. I have no say in if those icons stay or go. But yeah, there's some considerable loading time for those icons, which is a little frustrating, but they've fixed some of that too. So under Revit selection, we have access to all of our typical nodes. We're going to do categories. We're going to move a little fast on this. This is recorded and the whole data set's available. We have keynote tags, which is cool. We're going to do all elements of category for that. And now we have all of our keynotes very quickly. These little flyout things, that's not out of the box Dynamo. That's from Monocle, and it helps you clean up your graphs really quick. I'm kind of OCD with my Dynamo graphs, and I'm also lazy. So I got tired of selecting these and going edit. Where the heck is it even? Edit align. Align selected, top. So I made a tool for it. That way it just does it really quickly. So that was one of the big things that I wanted. In terms of how some of these new features work, and if you really want to kind of keep taking the whole thought forward, you convert that to a category by ID so that way it doesn't break when I migrate it to a supported version, Revit 21, right? Yeah, so that's working. That parameter name is key source. So that's right there. So we're actually able to access that too. Elements in Revit share criteria or parameters or properties. So if we go to the element dropdown, we can do a get parameter value by name. And from here, we can get key source. These are case sensitive for our beginner Dynamo users. Parameter names are case sensitive, so you do need to type that in how it appears in the project browser, wherever that went, key source. I have a node that's case insensitive in Rhythm, but if you know the case, just use the out-of-the-box node. But if you're exploring, use the case insensitive version. Cool, so now we got that key source value. Uh-oh. Okay, whew, I saw run started and it wasn't finishing. Okay, good. Another cool new feature, so we'll go over some features here. You can create groups, typically use Control-G on your keyboard for group. So create group, you can do that. Monocle has it as well as a quick input. Groups do have a header in Dynamo 2.13, but they have a description as well, watch. Oh, keynotes and source. So now they have a description. That's pretty cool, right? Now you can be a little more descriptive with your group input whenever you're building graphs. Another really cool feature, is probably one of my favorite things in Dynamo 2.13. Yeah, now you can drag and drop things into groups. Is that pretty cool? Yeah? All right, cool. You got to react or else I'll just turn it off. All right, thank you. Whew. I gave all the candy to you all, so I don't have any sugar. I'm just kidding. That's really nice though, because now we can start to clean these things up really well. And if you just really want to get crazy, you can just collapse it too. So now our groups are collapsible as well in Dynamo 2.13. They've really started to reel all of this in and get all these groupings and all these things to work really well for some of this crazy graphs we're building. I think when they first released Dynamo, they're like, oh, they'll add a few nodes to the canvas and you don't need notes, you know? And then they added groups finally and we're like, okay, good. And then now we're like, the groups aren't good enough, and then they added that too. So we have a few options there. Another one, I think it's in this build. If you hold down Alt, it's not in this build yet. No. So my first contribution to Dynamo's source code, I started as not a programmer, just messing around in Dynamo, was holding down Alt, you can now remove nodes from groups. So that's pretty cool. I put that into the source code this last year, which was pretty neat. I never imagined that I'd be poking around Dynamo source code, so it's pretty cool. It's not in the Revit version yet because once again, I gotta wait till that point release to get the newest version of Dynamo because they're mean to me, you know? All right, so the other thing that we need to do if we wanna override these things is we can kind of work backwards if we want. So a really great package, if you wanna write this down too, is Genius Loki, I think that's how it's pronounced. He has some really great nodes in here for overriding things. So in this case, we're going to override the keynotes based on their source to let us know and flag them. So if we look at Genius Loki, we actually have a node in here to set an override in a view. So let's see, I might have to just search it, but I know it's called set element overrides. So we'll go ahead and use the search. And that's his little logo. The logos still show up in the search, which is nice. And we're going to also do a reset, so we'll place that one too. Oh, another thing, in Dynamo 2.13, it's in run manual by default, so you have to change it to run automatic if you like that. Years ago, it was in run manual, and then they went to automatic, and it scared everyone, and then we all got used to it, and now they switched it back to manual. So they like to play with our emotions. That's under Dynamo and preferences. And you can do a default run setting in there. Bless you. I think someone sneezed. But yeah, so we'll work backwards from this. So we need a view, we need elements, we need overrides, and we need to know if we gotta hide it. So working backwards, I need to figure out what view these keynotes belong to. Another really great package for this is Clockwork. So if you search for owner view, every element in Revit has a parameter or property called owner view. So if we plug an element into this, it'll run for a moment, and then we should be able to get the owner view of that element, which is pretty nifty. And this will allow me to commit those overrides based on the view, which is sweet. Right? That kind of cool? Anyone know about owner view before this? Okay, it's really great for if you want to delete things in specific views too. Yeah, don't just delete from like back here. Don't do that. Delete once you get over here and filter or something, yeah. Generally speaking, if you go to extensions and workspace references, in Dynamo 2.10 they introduced this, but it now serializes what packages stuff comes from, which is nice. It's really usable now in Dynamo 2.13, but I tend to kind of have trust issues still with some of this. So Control-Shift-P will actually let you annotate all your custom nodes as well with Monocle. I like to hard code that. Yeah?
What are the little colors in front of the inputs?
The little colors in front of the inputs, that's another graphic change in 2.13. So red is not fulfilled for an input. Blue is an input with a default value. So that little line next to it's indicating that it has a default input stored in it. So all these have default values, and if you hover, you can see that reiterated as well.
Does it change color if all the ones that need input are met? Like, did that before, the node would change color?
Yeah, so if all of them are met, does the node change color? I guess we could kind of find out real quick. the node itself does not change color. If it's an invalid input, I think the node should still do something. It's still taking that as a null. It's defaulting out. So we'd have to try with another node. But the nodes do turn colors, and when you zoom out, nodes actually offer visuals of what they're doing too now in 2.13. So if you zoom out, or it's 2.16. But if you zoom out, they start to show you what kind of status they're at as well. And I'll show another tool for that here in a moment. But yeah, another new feature is the notes in Dynamo are now pinnable. So if you select a node in a note, you can pin it to the node. That's really cool because now these things move around together. We don't have notes just floating off in space. But notes are even more useful because in Dynamo Player, that's a description of the input now, which is epic. So we'll look at that in a moment when I open the finished graph. So what we'll do is we're going to move this over. I probably won't build out this whole graph, we'll see. And what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and get that view plugged in. Cool. Who else use dictionaries in here in Dynamo? Not enough people, so we're going to show it. Awesome. A dictionary in Dynamo is a way to look up things very quickly without using getItem@index. So what you can do is you place a dictionary, these top level nodes, and given some string values or text, I can define what I want things to relate to. In our case, that means the word user for user keynote is going to be red. It's like a lookup table for the color red. Element will be green, and so will material. Those will both be the same lookup value for a color. So in this case, I'm going to use a code block. They're a scary thing, scary word, but if you put quotes, you can just put text.